Hello, all you nice people out there. Well, I bet if you're listening right now, you're probably hoping for a story, right? Well, congratulations! You have officially found the best one. The Grand Adventure of Pickles. That's me. As you've probably guessed at this point, my name is Pickles. I know you're probably thinking that Pickles is a pretty funny name, right? Well, I always sort of thought it was funny too. But I really like my name. Pickles just sort of feels positive. Once upon a time, I asked my mom and dad why they named me Pickles. According to them, they gave me the name Pickles because, well, who doesn't like pickles? Nobody, that's who. Everybody loves pickles. I mean, there's nothing to hate about them. They're all small and green and cute and tasty. They have great shelf life. And they can easily be stored just about anywhere. What's not to like about pickles? And my mom and dad said that I was just like a little pickle when I was born. All tiny and green and adorable. Which I don't doubt. I am fairly adorable. Plus, my mom and my dad really wanted me to get along with the people we live with. It tends to be mostly humans. I mean, there are a few others, sporadically thrown about, but it's mostly humans. I come from the land of Iridel. Specifically, I live in the city of Talmir, which is actually just a stone's throw away from the Grand Kingdom of Man, which is actually only a few days' ride from here. My story is actually pretty cool. In the end, I actually got to meet them, the king and the queen, and all their kids. They were really nice, even if they did sort of think I was a kid too. It just sort of comes with the territory when you're a goblin. Being small is just part of the package. But I make it up in adorable personality and gallons of energy. You're probably wondering why goblins were living with a bunch of humans, right? Well, to sort of make a long story short, my parents were originally part of a traveling or nomadic group of goblins. Goblins tend to live like that. For whatever be the reason, people don't seem to like goblins that much. They don't trust us. I don't know why. I mean, I suppose there are some bad goblins out there, but I defy you to name me a single race that doesn't at least have a few bad apples. A few cucumbers that weren't fit to be pickles. Regardless, my mother and father's tribe sort of got eaten by a roving band of Morrican. Morrican are these big, sort of slimy, yet somehow furry, toothy monstrosities. They're really scary. And I heard they smell. I've never actually seen one, and I hope that I never do. Because frankly, they sound, well, unpleasant and hungry. And they travel in large packs, sometimes numbering 30 to 40. And my parents' village just happened to set up shop in their traveling path. So one day, while they were all going about their business, it suddenly became mayhem as everyone was running for their life. And most people got eaten up, except my parents, and a few of other goblins, who managed to get away, eventually settling in the village I live in now, with no more tribe to call home, and the rest of the goblin tribes being fairly nomadic, not exactly giving out their location. Our numbers weren't high enough to sustain on our own, so we moved into a village. According to my parents, the move was a bit begrudging. And that's pretty much where I was born, and spent most of my life. My mom and dad spent their lives as trappers. They'd go out and catch things, and then sell meat and furs. My life there was sort of roundabout. You know, I tend to take the good with the bad. You know, sometimes you have to eat the vegetables. For me, the vegetables tend to be things like school. School. Just a big place filled with stupid heads. As you can surmise, based on my attitude, I wasn't exactly popular. Especially when all the other kids outgrew me by a much wider margin. Kinda hard when you're graduating and everyone else is 4 to 5 feet taller than you. I would sometimes get bullied, but they would usually get bored of it pretty quickly. And they'd even say silly things like pickles are nasty, which is just silly. It's alright, I knew they were lying. There were lots of things that you could do after high school, but I decided I wanted to be an adventurer. I mean, those guys get to go on all of these quests to new and exciting places, meeting people all over the place. My mom and my dad weren't exactly fans of that whole idea. They said adventuring is dangerous, that I should just stay in the village, be a trapper like them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a trapper, but I wanted to be an adventurer. And the heart wants what it wants. The only problem was figuring out where I'd place as an adventurer. You see, you can't just be an adventurer. You need to have a certain set of skills. There are warriors and healers, magic casters, rogues, all sorts of stuff, which is all really exciting, but hard to actually get very good at. You sort of have to pick a lane and stick with it. But first, you sort of have to find which one you're good at. And if you're good at more than one, which is actually fairly rare, then you can cross-class and have more than one particular set of skills. It actually makes you much more valuable, and people tend to want you in their parties more. After digging around and making a lot of practice with all sorts of different stuff, trying to heal, wielding a sword around, and trying some magic and other types of things. I even tried my hand at archery. I wasn't very good with a bow, primarily because most of the bows I could find were bigger than me, but even with a small crossbow, I wasn't a very good shot. But eventually, I found out that I had talent with a sword, and not only that, but I could also cast magic. I was hoping for the ability to be good at blowing stuff up. I mean, all that lightning and fireball stuff, it just seems kind of cool. But I only got illusion magic, so I can sort of be tricky. But that can be very useful, especially when you're small and easily damageable. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, even though I was a cross-class, it was really hard to find anybody interested in having me in their party, which was sort of disappointing. But as I said, stay positive. And eventually, I found a party willing to take me on. They were pretty low level, which was honestly just fine with me since I was, well, low level too. That just meant we could build up together. We did a few minor missions, slaying some weaker beasts, and we even got to go on an intel gathering mission. It was really exciting. I'd say it's our best mission to date. Or was, before Pickles' grand adventure sort of took a drastic turn. So there I was. There was sort of an enemy encampment. It was this nasty band of orcs. They had been going around pillaging and plundering. And I know what you're thinking, not all orcs are bad. I have you know I've met many very nice orcs. But these guys weren't. They were very, very bad. But hey, there are plenty of very, very bad humans too. Just as I said, not all pickles are fit to be cucumbers. Oh, excuse me. Not all cucumbers are fit to be pickles. Strange how you can reverse it and it still sort of works. It doesn't make sense, but it still sounds like it works, you know? Well, regardless, we had just scoped out the enemy encampment. Our primary task in the mission was to reacquire a very valuable artifact, a magical item. Those are really cool, and do lots of neat stuff. As of yet, I didn't have any magical items. They're way too expensive. But supposedly the power of this magical item was pretty intense, and so we were getting paid far more than we had been for any of our previous missions. Our job? Collect enemy troop numbers, class of fighters, see if we can find their plan of movements and actions, and most importantly, retrieve the artifact. We had just finished up with most of the counting in total about 15 orcs, 10 throughout the warrior classes, and it looked like about 5 of them were magic casters of some sort. With all the numbers up to date, and actually having snuck around a bit to overhear a conversation. We even managed to determine where they were planning on heading next. And finally, it came down to the last objective of the mission: reacquire the artifact. We're currently a short distance away from the camp, staying pretty stealthy, as the troop leader was beginning to assess the situation.
All right. Well, the situation seems to have been working in our favor thus far,
Garius said. Garius is a high elf. He's the oldest one in the troop, by at least a few decades. And what a looker.
I don't care what the odds are. Are we bludgeoning some orcs or aren't we?
Said Dareth. He's the troop fighter, and he's a dwarf. I sort of like talking to Dareth. He's the only one that doesn't have to bend down to look me in the eye. He's a fairly sturdy guy, too.
Calm down, Dareth. Just let the boss talk. Remember, he's the brains of the operation.
That's Alema, human archer. Alema's pretty nice, and she's great with animals. So saith her pet squirrel, King Harper. That's the squirrel's name.
Okay. By the looks of it, it should be pretty simple. They're not that sharp. As of yet, they haven't taken notice of any of us. We've been able to move around the outskirts and even get a little closer towards the inside. But I don't think we're going to be able to make it all the way into the artifact as a group. The only chance we have of claiming the artifact without being found out is for one of us to go and select, sneak past, claim the artifact, and make their way out of the group. Remember, this is just an information gathering mission. Conflict does not work to our benefit. If all goes well, we can get out of here without spilling a single drop of blood and still get our reward. So, Pickles, eyes up, he said, looking over to me. Pickles on action, I replied, giving a salute. Good. I love your enthusiasm, Pickles. Now, you're the only one of us who can cast any illusion magic. That'll work to our benefit here. And you're fairly small, which makes you harder to notice. So, what I need you to do is go invisible and get inside. We're aware that they're housing the stolen merchandise in this tent here, he said as he laid down a map, pointing to one of the central tents. All you have to do is get inside, claim the artifact, and sneak back out, he said as he handed me a whistle. Now, this is an emergency whistle. Do not, under any circumstances, blow it unless it's an emergency. Basically, if you get busted. If that happens, then we'll all sweep in. We move in straight line pattern. Dareth up front, and the rest of us will back him up. Remember, our mission is not to kill them. We only need to fend them off until Pickles is safe with the artifact. And then, we run like hell. These orcs may be strong, but with the thickness of their armor, they're not likely to be able to move quickly. We can outpace them. Once we get oh so close towards our destination, they won't be able to follow us anymore. We'll be home free and with coin in our wallets. Is everyone clear on the plan? I once again gave him a very positive and energetic salute, as did everyone else. But they more or less just nodded. Good. Then plans a go, he said, as we all split up for the moment being, and I cast my invisibility spell, which is pretty cool. It allows me to become invisible, obviously. Afterwards, I began sneaking my way into the camp. Making it past the outskirts wasn't too hard, but things got a little bit more difficult as I moved towards the center, slipping past one tent after another. As I did and their numbers began to increase within the area, I had to be a bit more slow going. But eventually I managed to slip my way quietly into the tent, slipping under one of the outside edges. Inside, they had a bunch of bags that looked like they were stuffed with different stolen goods. It took me a while of panning through it quietly, which made the process slower. I made sure to keep that whistle in my mouth the whole time, just in case somebody walked in and saw me sifting through.
Even if you're invisible, people tend to put two and two together if they see a bunch of bags opening themselves and objects floating around on their own. But finally, I hit the jackpot. The Ring of Pickles. A funny name if you ask me. Supposedly, this magical item allows you to transfer magical power. Basically, it has its own magical effect, and by casting magical spells into it, you sort of charge it up. And once you do, it activates its magical effect. It was definitely expensive looking. A solid silver ring with all sorts of fancy engravings and jewels in it. At that very moment, I was sort of falling prey to the weakness of goblins. It's basically our Achilles heel. We love shiny things. And man, was this thing shiny. It was at the moment that I caught myself staring into my reflection that over my shoulder, I saw another reflection walk in.
What the?
The very large orc said, as he walked in and saw me standing there, holding their stolen merchandise. Or, more closely announced to, their merchandise floating in the middle of the air. It looked like this was one of the magic casters. It was at that very minute that I blew the whistle for all I was worth. And he started casting a spell.
Junak Sambal Diamosa,
he said, as he began lifting the large staff he held in his grasp, and a swirl of bright green energy began to coalesce around the head of the staff and his other hand. And that's when I remembered the power of this item. It absorbs magical spells. So, not really thinking anything about it, other than not wanting to die, as he sent the spell flying in my direction, I could think of nothing else but to just hold out the ring and hope for the best, as the spell he cast impacted the ring, which had a massive hole in the center that I almost expected the blast to just pass straight through. The green whirl of energy was suddenly stopped, like it hit a solid surface in the center, as the waves of green began to flow out into the ring, filling up the countless grooves on it, as all of the gems began to alight, and as the green energy subsided altogether, there was suddenly a bright flash of light, brilliant blue light, and suddenly I felt myself picked up off my feet and felt like I was falling through a torrent, a swirling mass of blue light like a tornado, and everything was topsy-turvy, moving around in all sorts of directions. It felt like I was traveling through some sort of whirly-derby passageway that looped and curved and spun around until I was very abruptly dropped flat on my face, which, well, hurt like the dickens. It felt like whatever I landed on was pretty solid, like stone, but very rough in texture. As I started to get my senses about me, pulling myself up to my feet, finding that there was finally an up and a down again, I suddenly found myself on some sort of strange stone surface. It looked like some sort of volcanic rock. It was very coarse, and strange enough, it seemed to have some sort of line painted on it. A big yellow line. As I looked around, it seemed like this stone surface was straight, sort of in the shape of a road. But I've never seen any road like this. Even paved roads are usually done with bricks, but this seemed to be simply one long stretch of solid volcanic stone. The strangest thing I had ever seen, as I suddenly looked to the side to find a large set of blindingly bright white eyes flying at me rapidly. So, of course, I panicked. I screamed loudly and ran as some massive creature barreled past me, roaring loudly, as I cartwheeled off of this volcanic stone substance to the side of this road, I guess. And as I looked, it seemed like the creature had two eyes in the back as well. bright glowing red ones. And in that moment, I realized that I was probably somewhere very different. And I didn't have the ring with me. So, however I got here, I wasn't going to be able to use the ring to get back. This was most definitely bad. I'm looking for a bright side, and having a hard time finding one. Where in the bejesus am I thought to myself as I turned around from that strange road-shaped substance running the ground to see what looked like an ocean of lights. It seemed like it was nighttime, and yet out in my vision, there seemed to be all these structures. They were all big and blocky, and all of them were filled with lights that shined out from everywhere. Wow, I said as I stared out at them. I know I wanted to be an adventurer, but I think I've hit my limit of adventure for the day. I think I want to go home now, I said as I stared out at what looked to be a city of lights. How strange. Now, how do I get back home?